Hello, my name is Najette Gonzalez, and this is for Principal Practicum, class EDAD 6362. And this is Principal Rachel Nefrup. And today we will be discussing observation number 2, pre-conference, in regards to a professional development. I'm just going to move this back and forth. Okay, so you and I have kind of already discussed a professional development. We are going to address Lightspeed in a different professional development that you and I will do. But you had also mentioned that there is a real need for teachers to get a professional development on research-based writing strategies. Why do you think that this is an issue?
Well, because that's the ECR and the SCR is something, the writing is a skill that is not only tested each year on the STAR test, but it is just a higher level skill that we know that our kids need for development. For analysis, it is that analysis level.
Okay. Going back to the campus improvement plan, for problem statement number 10, it does mention teachers are not using high quality writing strategies, so professional development is needed for SCRs, ECRs. So we're going to use that part of the campus improvement plan and I will use that as my guidance for creating the professional development. And so can you tell me a little bit about what we are using RACE in this school? Is that a district-wide thing?
That is a district-wide strategy.
Okay.
So that is the district-wide strategy for all of our RLA classes from 3rd grade until through high school. So 3rd to 12th grade, they're already starting RACE. We have not gotten the elementary kids yet that are familiar with using it. We're still kind of training them as soon as we get into 6th grade and trying to be consistent with our 6th, 7th, and 8th for that RACE strategy. R and the A really go together, really stating that question and stating that answer to the question. Of course, finding that C, which is that cite that evidence, and then the E is that explanation, answering that how and why. Basically, your evidence proves your answer. And that's a hard upper level thinking for our kids. It really has to be scaffolded out how we do it, and there has to be a lot of modeling because our kids don't know. We use a lot of sentence stems and as well as we are teaching it. I guess where we're having the trouble and where we're running into is it's the reading strategy for the district, but then like social studies uses ACE, which is the same thing, and then science uses CER, claim, evidence, reasoning. And what we're having the trouble is our kids aren't making the connections, even though they're the same thing and they're writing those SCRs, they're not making the connections that's the same writing.
Okay. So, basically what I'm going to work on in the professional development is, and let me know if this has already been done. Do the science and social studies teachers know that it's the same thing?
Well, you got to remember that most middle school teachers, even RLA teachers, are not English trained.
Okay.
Most of them are generalist.
Okay.
And so a lot of them, even our RLA teachers, we got to teach how to teach writing because they do not know necessarily how to teach writing.
Okay.
That is something where they're lacking. When we are doing our rehearsals on Fridays, that was one of the things because our science was doing the CERs for the first time, which is where we kind of discovered, right, this is really going to confuse our kids. It's the same process, but we're asking them for a different acronym to kind of learn that process. And the science teachers were like, well, we can just teach it all. teaching all three. Yes, that's a 3 to 4 sentences for our kids, but that's a big thing when you're thinking about the levels of our kids. And how do you teach that? How do you scaffold that? Well, it's going around, it's giving those sentence stems. It's asking them to orally say it first, and then they can write it down. It's a lot of modeling for the kids, the different steps. It's highlighting it different. It's all the different strategies, but we have to teach our teachers that. I think we're thinking about that whole writing clinic for our teachers because they don't know how to necessarily teach it and break it down.
Okay, so I have a question. So I know my phone's kind of wobbly. My question is, who is telling them that they have to use the CER?
That'd be the district.
Do they not see that there's a conflict there?
And that's what we're kind of trying to ask and find out, because we always kind of did it school-wide as race the past 2 years because it needs to be consistent, because one of the things, especially the middle school developmental, they really have a hard time seeing connections between for the contents. When we are constantly changing strategies, even though we're really asking them to do the same thing, but just in different subjects, it confuses them. They already struggle with writing, and so the same strategy would be the best. So compromising right now is what we've done is we have anchor charts in all of our science classes that have CER, and then we have race beside it to kind of show it's the same thing. Your C is your R and your A. Your E, your E is your C. Is showing them that. It's getting those kids to make those connections, but that's truthfully asking a lot when we're already asking a lot of them to teach them this whole process of writing and this formulaic kind of writing to be evidence-based.
Right. So I'm just curious as to how I should present the professional development, because I mean, kind of
truthfully, I would think this is how I would do it, because they aren't writing teachers.
Yeah.
And they aren't reading teachers. Is to do it almost, you're gonna have to teach them to do it kind of formulaic and then modeling it for them, having them write one and doing the different steps, giving them the sentence stem, which is kind of what we did in our science class, in our science with our 2 8th grade teachers. Our science, they have the sentence stem and they have to go around and ask the orally, and then the kid can write it. Modeling that for them, showing them those different ways to model it, and then showing them. One of the things we talked about was even having them the different parts, having them highlighted 3 different colors, as our kids need to see that visually, that it's these 3 steps and how they all flow together. But once again, we really want to make the connection that race and CER are the same thing.
So when I'm presenting it to them, do you think that I need to have the 2 types of acronyms there and say, look, this is the same thing?
Yes.
Like, this means this.
Yes.
The C means this.
Yes.
The C means this for you. Like that type of thing. But I know that they do what is it? CER. Okay. So for race, we still want them to do the R and the A, right?
And truthfully, the R and the A is the same sentence.
Right.
It's the same sentence. Like, that's why social
and that's
studies
confusing in itself.
Exactly.
Even for reading teachers.
Yes, that's exactly, because what you'll see in a lot of like beginning writing is that they're gonna restate the sentence, and even though it's not a complete sentence, they're gonna put it as a complete sentence, and then they're just gonna try to state their answer. And so teaching our kids, which is why, truthfully, I like it just better as ACE, and then
so do I.
Just using, all right, how do we write a complete answer? We restate our question. And then we answer it is because blank, and then we get it orally first, and that's what our laps for our academic monitoring can be. I'm just going to come around. I'm just going to check your RNA now. I'm just going to check your RNA. Getting kids to learn to label it. I mean, getting them. It's right now we are building the steps of the awareness, and it's very hard for our kids to do all 3 steps when they have not understood the R and the A or the C first, and then adding into that evidence that it has to prove that answer. And then the E is a very hard step for our kids. That explanation is very hard because they have to answer and has to be on topic, and it can't repeat the exact same thing. That how and why that evidence proves
Right.
our RNA, our answer.
Right. I think it's also going to be the science teachers are going to really have to buy into it.
Yes. And I mean, we know they like to push back.
Yeah. Yes. Yesterday, even when I was talking to one of the science teachers, he's like, it just doesn't make sense. We already have a way.
But they've got to understand that our kids, this is the first time, and it's just confusing our kids. And they don't see connections. Just like they lack, I mean, what do our kids lack? Experiences and connections to the content. And that's what we know that they have to make to do better in these contents. So especially with like social studies, if they're not making any kind of connection to the text.
Right.
If they're not seeing any relevance to the text, they're not going to get anywhere.
Right. Okay. So one last question. Is this, which I mean, I think it is, how do you think this is going to help with student growth? Can you just kind of give me like what your view is on that?
Overall, like we all know kind of the thing, if our teachers are more comfortable teaching it, that's why I would say I would model it for them.
Yeah.
But then they're going to need to rehearse it probably.
Right.
And they're going to have to practice. And I think that's the hard part with our teachers is they have to write them themselves first, which our 8th grade science, let me correct that. 8th grade science were very good about doing that. They would write their answers out first. I was like, you got to think what these kids are going to struggle with.
Right.
And then they had, I was like, so writing those models first, because I was like, kids also have to see the fluent writer.
Right.
Step by step. And so
Okay.
they have to write it out first, see what those kids are going to really struggle with. And then when they were teaching it to us, because they were teaching the 8th grade science to our lay-based people, and we struggled with some of the concepts. And not, I was like, not the writing portion of it, but some of the concepts. And so it was a good indication of what our kids were going to struggle with. And so I think when you write this PD, because you're going to be doing it with science and social studies, give them each a question in their own content.
Okay.
To practice.
Doing it. Okay. And I'll definitely come up with it, and then I'll present it to you so that you and I can work on it together where you see any changes that need to be made. So, okay. Well, that'll conclude our pre-conference meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Rep.
Hi, my name is Najat Gonzalez, and this is Principal Practicum Semester 2, and today I'm going to be delivering a RACES graphic organizer training for our teachers today at Cunningham at South Park Middle School. So we'll just let everybody introduce themselves.
My name is Arturo Guzman.
Jennifer Hutchins.
Jennifer Wattis.
Joe Davidson. Nick Woodward.
And our principal, Miss Rachel Neff Rupp, will be joining us momentarily. So we'll get her as soon as she comes in. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about RACES, which is a district initiative to help promote writing in our classrooms. And science teachers, I know that you guys are using CER, which stands for
Claim, evidence, reasoning.
Right. So today I kind of wanted just to show you, we'll let them pass.
Running close.
I wanted to show you that these two types of writing strategies are very similar, and it's something that can be easily applied to your classrooms, okay? So yeah, let's get into it. All right, so I wanted to go over our objectives so that way you know what your finished product is going to be today when you leave this training. So today, we will analyze the connection between RACES and CER and practice applying the strategy using science passages aligned to TEKS. Repeat.
We will analyze the connection between races and CER, practice applying
applying strategies using science passages allowing students.
Today, you will construct a complete racist response to a science passage that demonstrates how the strategy supports CER writing in your classroom.
I will construct a complete racist response to a science passage that demonstrates how the strategy supports CER writing in my classroom.
Okay, let's get started, guys. So what is racist? I'm sure you've seen this before. So basically, racist is the R and the A stand for restate the question and answer the question. Now, what's unique about these two is really and truly they can be combined into the same sentence because we're restating the question, but at the same time we're answering whatever the question is asking us. Obviously, cite evidence. Where in the passage can I find evidence for the answer? Explaining it, and then summarizing or wrapping it up. So all of this is into one paragraph. It completes the paragraph. So what's the connection to CER? Well, it's actually pretty much the same thing, guys, except for this is a little bit more writing. That's all there is to it. More reasoning, more explaining, more evidence. Now, right here, R and the A is the claim. It's the same thing as the C. Right here, C is the evidence, E is the evidence. The E and S is the reasoning. So again, same concepts, a little bit more explanation here, which is good because it gives the opportunity for the kids to explain their reasoning and their thinking just a little bit further, just pushing them just a little bit further. It's the same structure, just a different vocabulary. So why would you even do this? Well, for a lot of reasons. Cunningham is using races, right? And so it's really important for the kids to use one writing strategy so that way it's a seamless approach, right? It helps students tackle star-constructed response questions. Again, getting them to do one strategy it helps them just with that repetitiveness, doing it over and over again and doing it the same thing in all classrooms. Reinforces critical thinking. Again, the same thing that you're doing with the CER, it's happening with the races. Creates consistency between the ELA and the science classroom, which I think is the most important thing. Consistency. Let's take a look at a passage. So this one is from 6th grade, from the TEKS, 6.7a. A student builds a simple electric circuit using a battery, wires, and a small motor with a spinning fan blade. When the circuit is closed, the fan begins to spin and the motor becomes warm to the touch. So here's the question. What energy transformations are taking place in the circuit? Support your answer with the evidence. Now, when answering a question like this, it's important to remember that those kids already have that background knowledge. So they're able to answer this question, right? This is something that you have been teaching in your classrooms. So just to keep that in mind when we are looking at these questions. Somebody who is not really familiar with science probably wouldn't really know the answer to this, right? It's not something that you can go into the passage like reading and kind of, infer the answers. You really have to have this background knowledge. So that's one difference to keep in mind when you're using this approach for science classes. But still, this is something that they should know because it's something that you've reinforced in your classrooms. All right, I wanted to break it down for you. So, the R and the A, remember, we're talking about the C right here. So, if I was to answer this question, this is what I would write right here. The energy transformations that are taking place in the circuit are chemical energy from the battery changing into electrical energy, which is then transformed into mechanical energy and thermal energy. Again, I already have that background knowledge. But I wanted you to see how I restated that question and then I answered it. I combined these two letters together. For my evidence, I'm going into the passage and finding that evidence. So I'm using the sentence stem in the passage, and that's something that you can provide for your students. It says that the fan begins to spin and the motor becomes warm to the touch. So that's something that they can go back in and use that sentence to support their answer. Right here for the E, this is what I wrote. This shows. This is really simple for students to remember when they're starting that E. It's this very simple sentence stem. This shows that the electrical energy is powering the motor, which is the mechanical energy, and also producing heat, which is the thermal energy. So this last one, the S, I'm just putting it all together, I'm summarizing it. I like to use therefore. I don't know what you guys are using to kind of summarize the entire passage, but I think this is simple again for students to remember. Therefore, the circuit demonstrates how energy can be transformed from chemical to electrical, then into both mechanical and thermal energy. I'm taking everything that I wrote and I'm kind of summarizing this. And this is something that students are doing in their ELR classes. They should be able to summarize their thinking. All right. You can see here, I put it all together. So this is the final product. You can see that all those sentences are just combined. And so when students are using those graphic organizers, here in the library, we're using this graphic organizer, which is the same thing. The only difference is I'm not putting the C and the E, the extra one, because there's not enough to explain and cite in those little bitty science passages, okay? So I took out one C and the E and I left it. So here's the final product, and you can see that I color-coded the R and the A, the C, the E, and the S. And this is something that you can do too with your students. It really helps when you're color-coding them, just so they can see the different parts of the paragraph and what each sentence stands for. All right, questions. How might using races in science writing help students strengthen their CER responses? Turn and talk to your table mates. What are you thinking?
I think the elaboration of what they're going through is going to help them when they're going through races. They have to break it down from each step and get what they need from the reading and put it into their answer, which is going to directly give them help in completing their CERs.
Okay. I like that it breaks down, explain, and summarize. So it lets them know that your reasoning is a little bit more than just a quick statement.
Just a one sentence answer. Yeah, it's really pushing them to like think further into why they're thinking that.
Well, it's letting them prove their answer. They can't, that now is the time where we can just say, that's my answer, because they've got to go further and they have to be able to give you that evidence. And then that explanation is that how and the why. How and why does that evidence prove your answer? It's going that step further. And remember, if a kid could explain it to you verbally, and that's one of the things we talk about in science class when we're doing these CERs, if they can say it to you verbally, then they can write it. Because if you just tell a kid to write it, they can't. But if you do it step by step with them and say, hey, so, sir, what is the energy transfer is blank, they could probably answer you there.
That's why I like the ADIs, like they take a long time, but it does do, they have to state their claim and then they have to provide their evidence in like a graph or data table or something, and then they have to justify their answer. So I tell them that's your claim, your evidence, and your reasoning, and it's an entire, it looks like you've done all this work, and it's
3 sentences.
it makes it really fast that way.
And it's that higher level thinking where they can't just say, that's my answer. That's what a lot of our kids just want to be like, well,
Yep.
because it's why.
They can
Prove it.
regurgitate an answer
Yes.
well, but when
the
you go
finding
into
evidence.
depth in finding the evidence, I think it's more deeply learned.
Yes. Not like this. You said that deeply.
It makes for smoothing transition, so when they're writing, so we can take this and put it with our English class, and it helps them with their writing skills, even if it's just in writing, if they're not doing the full races, where they do the double siding, like this is for the double siding, so
Right.
you want the two sides, but they do aces where you're citing once and then you're also explaining that one site. So the CER goes along really well also with the aces.
And remember, they've got to make that connection too between what they do in English class is the same that they're doing in
Right, so
science.
if we
is
tell
the
them
same in
the
social
SCR
studies.
that they're writing right now can also help them in science class.
Because our
Oh,
kids
for
don't make
sure.
any kind of connection between their contents.
Yeah, so this is definitely, it's helpful because in 7th grade, they are definitely, that's what it's all about, writing. 6th grade, we're getting there, so they're starting there already, so they can't say anything in 7th grade, you're writing.
And technically, they've started in 3rd grade now.
Oh, wow.
And so they've been doing it for about 3 years now, supposedly, in the elementaries.
And
You know,
how about just being able to write a paragraph?
That's,
Just the
that's what
thoughts.
my
The
kid came home
thoughts and
with the other
putting them
day.
down
Was races.
is
It's gonna-
definitely like a
She's in
struggle.
4th.
Putting
But
together
it can be a
coherent
productive
thoughts.
struggle
It
because
is a
they
productive
have to learn it.
They know it, and they can tell you, they can talk to you all day, but just getting that thought on paper, this is a really good strategy.
Not quite, keep going.
And it's also really good for active monitoring too, because you can go around and say, I am going to be checking your C. I'm going to be, in this lab, I'm going to be checking your R.
And that's what I was telling you guys. This really is a multiple days, like going back and being repetitive and working with the R and the A and really just working through all of the components. They're not going to get it one time, and it can be overwhelming if you're presenting it all at once. What I used to do is just take it letter by letter and doing it and doing it and doing it every single day. And finally, when they got to the star, most of them got it. They got it.
And not even just doing it every day. You've got to model. They have got to
Yes.
see that exemplar there because they have to have something to go off of. So you have that exemplar on the board. Color code it. Your C, your E, your R is each different color. And then make them highlight those colors so they can see, well, here's what you're missing. Here's what you're not.
Yeah, that's what I should do. Like I said, normally if I was in the classroom, I would literally write this out. I had my keyboard hooked up to my smartboard, and I was literally thinking out loud, telling them, oh, this is what I'm thinking. This, I'm going back into the paragraph. I'm writing this. Okay, this is how I'm restating it. I'm typing it out. Because if I did not model every single day for them, they were lost. Didn't matter how many times I did it. I had to do it every single time we did it. So every single day I did it, we did one together, and then they did it on their stuff. That's what they turned into me. That was their final product. So it's a lot, but it's definitely worth it. They get it at the end of the year. Okay, I want you guys to work on one together at your table. Now, obviously, I gave you a graphic organizer that has an extra C and E. Just disregard those squares right here. You can mark out those second ones. But I want you to take this. In 1960, scientists studying the ocean floor discovered long underwater mountain chains called mid-ocean ridges. They also found that new crust was forming at these ridges as molten rock cooled and hardened. On the opposite side of the ocean, deep trenches showed places where crust was sinking back into the mantle. Here's the question. How does this evidence support the theory that Earth's surface is constantly changing? Okay, you guys can work together. Maybe one person can take the R and the A, one person can take the C. And I'm just gonna walk around, see how you're doing. If you have any questions, let me know.
Okay, so.
Mr. Woodward, you got a haircut.
Looks good.
Thank you.
Trying to spell this.
That's where I'm at today too.
I'm like, I was.
Because in one area. That was loud.
What are we thinking?
Static to Earth. You wanna hear my alright? Sure. This evidence supports the theory that Earth's surface is constantly changing because in one area the new land is being created, and in the opposite area the crust is sinking back into the Earth.
Alright, restate answer.
Evidence of crushed hormones will rock hardened.
I know this is out of yours.
Potential show the crust was sinking into the mantle.
You're supposed to have this one, but do you explain? Do you do races?
Use it?
C is cite.
Do you have
You cite.
your evidence from degree after math? Yeah.
That's why, because I was like,
So you don't have to restate.
So like a quote,
No, I thought all
like
subject did it.
molten rock cooling
Yeah,
hardened.
Cornell does stuff.
Yeah,
So maybe it could be something like the summarized part. I don't know.
maybe.
At the end of the week.
Maybe if you're feeling like you go above and beyond, you can create a question for that. to, to practice,
Yeah.
to practice the races in your class. Okay, we're gonna find a stopping point. I went around and I was kind of looking at what you guys were writing. I think everybody's going in the right direction, just for the sake of time. I think you all are doing a good job as far as following the graphic organizer, restating the question, answering it, and then going back. Again, I know if this is not one of the TEKs that you teach, you might not be too familiar with it, but you get the point of it, of restating it. It's just, again, just extending that thinking. All right, so this is how I would break it down. And so you can kind of compare yours to mine. So the evidence supports the theory that Earth's surface is constantly changing because it shows that new crust is being formed and old crust is being destroyed. So again, you can see that the R and the A are put together. Well, what evidence did I cite for that? The passage explains, again, using that sentence step. New crust was forming at these ridges as molten rock cooled and hardened, and that crust was sinking back into the mantle at deep trenches. Explain the evidence. This means that the Earth's crust is not fixed or permanent. Instead, it continually recycles as new material is added at mid-ocean ridges and old material is pulled back into the mantle of trenches. Now, again, a reminder that when I was coming up with these passages and stuff, I had assistance from AI. It's not gonna be perfect like this when a kid does it, right? But AI is something that you can use to help you, like when you're in a pinch and you need to come up with a quick passage. You'd be surprised if you pay for the upgrade, what it gives you. It can be accurate, right? Summarize your response. Therefore, the discovery of ridges and trenches provides strong evidence that Earth's surface is dynamic and always changing. Putting it all together, this is what it looks like. Again, I color-coded it and if I was presenting this to students, it's really important for them to see the different components. And you could even get them to go back and highlight the different parts of the races. All right. I want you guys to do one by yourself now, and we're gonna take some time to do that. But first, I want to just quickly touch base with you. What are we thinking? Are we thinking that this is something, I was listening to you talk whenever we did our turn and talk. Is this something that you think that you would be willing to apply in your classroom?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
What do you think some challenges would be for students? Like, seriously?
Time, because with science, we have to do a lot of hands-on activities and getting instructions into the kids' minds takes a little while, and then transitioning from coming in, unpacking their stuff, sitting down doing bell work, getting up to get their lab materials and get started on lab, and then stopping the lab to clean up, and then having enough time to
Do you guys
really
do labs every day?
At least
I know
twice
you
a
do
week.
quite a few.
Yeah, I do
Okay.
a lot. At least twice a week, and then we still need time for like an instructional. So we start with the inquiry lab, and then we'll build vocabulary, and that's kind of where we could do this, where we do our conclusion, where we're like making connections between the vocabulary and the inquiry lab. This would work, and then we do our big lab, and then we usually have to test or assess or.
Well, think about it this way. Like I said, this isn't like you're not doing the entire thing in one lesson. So like maybe one day you could do the R and the A just from a question. That's it. You're just doing the R and the A. And then doing that for a few weeks, and then moving on to the C and the E. Okay, now we're going to cite and then present our evidence and explain and all that. So maybe
I think it could work as a really good callback as to reflect on a lab. Maybe on the following day even, we like present a reading passage that summarizes what we went over in the lab, and then they have to make the claim, evidence, reasoning, or the races about what they were supposed to draw from actually doing the hands-on stuff.
Mr. Davidson, what do you think? I know he's our skeptic, right here.
No, I'm just tired. I've had enough caffeine today. No, like it's something we could do. Like I'm just kind of thinking like how I could really work it in with a lot of the ones I have that have reading issues and writing issues, and adapting this to their actual level.
They've
Trying to
been
figure it
working
out.
on it. So they have
Yeah.
already been working on it in reading. So they have gone through races. And I know which levels you're talking about because we do it. And that's why I'm in class support. So we're working on it, and maybe not have the high expectations for them, just to have it completed. Maybe just a sentence or just a couple of words where, you know,
Those
or
sentence names aren't
Absolutely.
already on a paper
Yeah.
might help.
that's how I
So
help
So
them.
they're
You
just
could
filling in
even
blanks.
you could
Yeah.
even scaffold it a bit further, and those kiddos who have accommodations or something. What I used to do, make a couple of graphic organizers. One that's blank, one that has the sentence stems,
Even
one
a
that has
fill in the
admin.
blank.
Yeah, fill in the blank. There's a lot of things you can do depending on what the level of the kid is. So, something. And I would love to help. Y'all know I was a reading teacher. So, I would love to help. So, even, I know in STAR too, I mean, maybe they'll let me, pull a small group or something. I don't know. We'll see.
Gladly.
Hey, that's why for our science fair conclusions, I will be in here with the librarian
Oh.
those days.
I'm gonna have to set up another day for doing cited work with you.
Okay.
Because it's
Library Day for Science.
Just
Yeah.
let me know.
We're gonna have lots of those this year.
works cited is pulling teeth right now.
Yeah, Yeah, it's tough enough. That's all on it. Okay, well, I just want to thank you guys for coming today. I appreciate you taking time, and I think we are good to go there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, this is a post-training, post-conference reflection that I wanted to add after everything has been said and done. So looking back at the training, there's a couple of things that I did want to touch base on. So after speaking with the principal, our goal was to provide a writing strategy training for non-ELAR teachers, which means in particular science. Based on data that we had reviewed together, and meeting one of the goals for our campus improvement plan for our school here at Cunningham, was we were seeing that students were struggling with writing in this particular subject. So what the science teachers had been doing is they had been using CER, and we were really trying to find a solution for how we could really encourage the science teachers to start using the RACES strategy, which is the strategy that we're using here on campus. And so that was the main goal of this professional development that we had done. Based on the feedback that I received from our science teachers, I think it went very well. They did state, as you can see in the video, that they would be using the RACES strategy they would start to implement it. I really liked the fact that they did give me some insight into what they were thinking. And based on what they said, I think one of the main concerns was how were they going to incorporate this into their daily lessons, which I can understand. Our science classes mainly conduct, excuse me, they conduct labs pretty often, a couple of times a week, and that takes up the majority of their time. And so that's the feedback that I was getting from them, is that seems like it might be a barrier for them, which I think can easily be fixed. Talking with the principal, she did kind of give me some feedback too of how we can further assist our science teachers so that they do feel comfortable and feel like they do have ample time to complete the RACES strategy in their classes. And I think that's something that we can talk with our district person who creates the IGs for our science teachers, and how we can incorporate more writing into the IGs, because that seems to be an issue as well, that there is not enough time that is being incorporated for writing. And this is something that is of concern because based on our STAR results that we got for this year, this is an area where students did score low. And so again, we feel like there was some good buy-in from our science teachers, but we definitely want to make sure that they know that we are here to support them. And again, touching base with those district professionals that are creating the lessons for our teachers here in our district. Those lessons are created for them, and the teachers implement them. And so I have offered my assistance as a principal candidate and as a past reading teacher to pull small groups and really work with this particular population so that our students are able to feel more comfortable using the racist strategy in a science environment. One of the things that our principal did mention was that there does seem to be a gap between the different subject areas in our school, and we really want to bridge that gap, and so that students really get the sense of a cross-curricular lessons. We want them to understand that reading is a part of science, and that science can be a part of reading, and those two kind of flow together. And so I feel like this was a good stepping stone. Again, I feel like further training will be needed, and touching base and following up with those teachers and making sure that they feel supported and have everything that they need. And I'm looking forward to using this year to work with them. Thank you.